Okay, so we're going to discuss quiz 4 as a review. I did give back 4 questions. So the questions that you guys scored really highly on, I'm not going to review. But the ones I gave back, I will review because you may see these again. The first one I gave back was one regarding the carotid artery. What blood vessel enters the cranium to supply the brain with fresh oxygenated blood? None of you fell for the jugular vein. One of you fell for the aorta. The aorta is basically still in the chest cavity in the heart. It's nowhere near the brain. So the other options were the common carotid artery or the internal carotid artery. So the common carotid artery is one of the very first points that come off of the aorta, and then it splits into two. And it goes into the external carotid, which supplies the scalp and the muscles of the face and head with blood. And then we have the internal carotid artery that goes into the cranium. So it goes into the actual skull bone to supply the brain with fresh oxygenated blood. So if the common carotid artery is still not even at the neck level, so that would not be correct. It's not even entering the cranium. So internal carotid artery is the one we want for that. The other two that I gave back, two of them that I gave back, was regarding how many neurons it takes to get the message up to the brain and how many it takes to get the command down. So it does take a total of 3 neurons to send sensory information up to the cerebral cortex. So our cerebral cortex, our commander-in-chief, he wants data. He wants the grunts, the sentries to go out and get information from the environment. And it goes through a couple of channels as it goes up the chain of command. And so it takes 3 different steps for it to get all the way up to him. So when we're receiving sensory information at our cerebral cortex, it takes 3 neurons to get that information up to the commander-in-chief. Now, once the commander-in-chief makes the call that he wants something done, he will send a motor command, an upper motor neuron command. And if we have an upper motor neuron command, we probably have a lower motor neuron command. So that's upper and lower, and that's 2. It takes, he's made the decision and he wants to execute it immediately. It only takes 2 to get send the signal down to the muscles to get them to do something. So it takes 3 to get the information up, that's sensory information going up to the brain, and it takes 2 to get the motor signal down to the muscles. So I hope that helps clarify that. The other one that I gave back was regarding pupil constriction. And a lot of you got it wrong. I was actually kind of surprised. A lot of you wanted to pick norepinephrine. And 2 of you picked epinephrine, I think just because it looked familiar to you. Epinephrine, we haven't even discussed the role of epinephrine in terms of neurotransmitters. Not that much anyway. So that would be a no. So norepinephrine is the neurotransmitter that's responsible for our sympathetic nervous system, and acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter that's responsible for our parasympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for our rest and digest, and acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter for that. Norepinephrine, being our sympathetic nervous system, is responsible for fight and flight. So this is activating our sympathetic nervous system. So if we need to fight a bear, we need to be able to see better to be able to do that. Especially in dim lighting, we need to see better. We need our pupils to dilate. If we're going to fight a bear, that would be norepinephrine. But if we want pupil constriction, we're actually lowering, making the diameter of our pupils smaller. We're actually, doing the opposite of dilation, we're constricting. That would be a parasympathetic nervous system response. And so we are in our rest and digest. We're not trying to fight a bear. We don't need to see well. We're going to constrict our pupil. And if we're trying to activate our parasympathetic nervous system, acetylcholine is the one to do that. So I gave those 4 back. I did want to kind of point out that before I give any questions back, 84% was the average score on this test, with a 98% being the high score and a 70 being the low. So I think overall you guys are doing pretty well. I'm going to give these 4 questions back, and that is going to bump some of your scores. But remember, 77 is required to pass this course. So on your assignments, you should be striving for at least a 77% or higher to maintain a passing grade in this class.